Have you ever heard the wolf cry to the blue corn moon, or asked the grinning bobcat why he grinned? Can you sing with all the voices of the mountain? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind?
Hey followers, this is your boy, Doug Kenney talking. I'm the author of Ray Guns of Kronos, War on Claudiusville, Part 1, The New Heroes. And today I have a very special guest. His name is Baker, and he's one of the producers for the Hollywood Disney film Pocahontas. And I'm glad to say that I'll be interviewing him today. Welcome, Baker.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you so much for reaching out and for having me speak with you today.
No problem. So you're in Sicily now?
I live in Tuscany, in the center of Italy.
Tuscany. That's really cool. So that's in the center of Sicily?
It's in the center of Italy. So Sicily is off the boot, if you will, of Italy.
Oh.
We're in the very heart of Italy. And I moved here back in 2010, just after I met Christian, who would become my partner in life, and we moved to Tuscany to open a hotel and restaurant where we live now.
Yeah, I don't know where I got Sicily from, but I guess I'm looking at it since I'm in outer space. Yeah. So yeah, you're the producer of Pocahontas. That's a classic Disney film, and I grew up with that film, and a lot of my former friends and schoolmates did as well. So did you imagine?
How old were you, Doug, when you would have seen Pocahontas in the movie theaters?
I didn't see it in theaters because I wasn't born yet, but I did see it on VHS.
Okay, fair enough. Thank God for VHS.
Yep, for sure. And VHS, it looks like it's making a comeback recently after not being produced for a while.
Well, you know, that's good because I have about 1 billion VHS tapes in my basement.
I used to have a lot of VHS tapes, and Pocahontas was one of them. And did you imagine that Pocahontas would turn into the Disney classic that it's turned into today?
You know, that's a really good and important question. I was lucky enough to join the Walt Disney Animation Department in 1989. And the department, very small at that time, was in the middle of finishing The Little Mermaid. And they were hiring for both Beauty and the Beast and the next movies, which would, of course, be The Lion King and Aladdin and Pocahontas. And during that time, in the late 80s and the very early 90s, as we were giving the rebirth to Disney animation, if you will, none of us knew, nobody knew the power of the films that we were making, the resonance of the films that we were making, the popularity, the insane popularity of the films we were making, but more importantly, the quality of the films that we were making. None of us understood it. We all came from different places, all over the country, to help build this department up, which had fallen into oblivion. I'm sure if you were to read about the Disney Studios during those years, you would learn, or you know already, that the stock, it was basically about ready to be broken up and distributed, sold in part to the Walt Disney Company. If it were not for Roy Disney Jr. Taking over, kind of fighting against the board and taking over the company, it would have been. But it was he, that wonderful man, may his soul rest in peace, that saved the department, and then with Jeffrey Katzenberg and Peter Schneider, took it into the next decade, which was so important for all of us. So we didn't know, to answer your question, we had no idea what we were working on. We just were trying to tell a good story with good talent, and to the best of our ability, make it make it entertaining.
Yeah, Colors of the Wind is definitely a classic song. It's one of my favorites because
Oh,
I
cool.
can relate to it.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's really incredible that Roy Disney was able to save his was he the son or the
Well, that's a good question. You know, Roy, you might after this interview go Google, just it'll interest you. He looked like Walt Disney, but
yeah.
he was in fact Walt had a brother, Roy Senior. Walt has two daughters, both of which are still alive. His brother Roy had only one son, Roy Jr. Now, Roy, as a kid, would run around the studio lot in the 40s and 50s and help his dad, at the then emerging Walt Disney Studios. And so he had a hands-on experience in the film industry, and then, of course, in the parks, because they were building the parks during those years.
Wow.
So he was a remarkable man, by the way. He was a wonderful human being. He could walk around the studio lot and call out to an employee and say, "Hi, Doug, how are you? How's your mom? Is she doing okay?" He knew things about people that just surprised all of us, but he cared.
Whoa, that's incredible. So if
Yeah.
I met him, he would have known some stuff about me, maybe?
If he didn't, he would have found out. And he would have, but more importantly, he would have remembered. So the next time he would have seen you, Doug, on the lot, he would have said, "Hey, Doug, how you doing? How'd that interview go with Baker? Did he blow it? Did he suck?"
That's a good one. That sort of reminds me about how I'm the only one that can really get in touch with film producers and celebrities easily. you know?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to demonstrate, that anyone can do anything they set their mind to if they put the work into it.
I completely agree.
Yeah. So I must ask you, how did you land your role in Pocahontas?
Well, I came in, as I said, in 1989, when they were hiring for all of those movies, they hired me on Beauty and the Beast. And I came in, it was a very small crew. The producer was Don Hahn. And we had and the directors were Kirk Wise and Gary Trousdale, excuse me. And it was a tiny little crew. There was a story team and an editor and Don. And they asked me to help out because they were running behind and they had a year to make the movie, a year, I don't know, 12, 14 months. And in about a month's time, I was promoted to the production manager of that movie, and I oversaw the production of Beauty and the Beast, which was a complete joy. Then, towards the end of that, they said, "Gosh, this was great. You did a great job on Beauty and the Beast. We were nominated for Academy Award Best Picture. And we'd like you to stick around. Would you like to stay here at Disney Animation?" I said, I love it here. I'm really happy. The people are great. I had fun in Beauty and the Beast. We worked our butts off, by the way. We worked every day, literally every single day for 12 months straight to produce that movie.
And
all of us did.
Yeah, and I should also mention a factoid. Back in 2001, it was selected for preservation by the Library of Congress.
Yes.
So that's something to be proud of.
It is. No, that movie was very special, and so they asked me then to be one of the producers on Pocahontas as a big step up in my career and in responsibility, and I took it willingly. And then I spent 4 years on Pocahontas.
Nice. That's really good. Were you just one of the producers, or were you the executive producers?
Nope, I was one of the producers. Jim Pentecost, who's a dear friend of mine, he was the producer, and he was recruited after me, but he was a producer on Broadway in the musical theater. Now, in the history of Disney Animation, because there were no other studios making animated films when we were making The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. There was literally, other than Blue Studios, which was basically defunct, there was nobody else making animated films. And so there was no talent to draw from. So Disney, Peter Schneider, who was the president then, had come from the theater world, and he started hiring managers, producers, from the theater world who would come into Disney animation because we were well suited to it, because we knew how to work with we knew how to collaborate.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Live action filmmaking is very different. You have very strong opinions, and everybody does what the director says or what the producer says. In animation, it takes a family to work together, to collaborate, to figure out how to solve the problems. And so the theater works the same way. So they brought all of us in from the theater world at that time. It was a big boom for Disney animation, and so they asked me to produce that movie, and with Jim, and the directors were Mike Gabriel and Eric Goldberg, and I went willingly.
Yeah, it's great. One thing I know about movies is everything is a collaboration in it.
At its best, it should be that. At its worst, it is not. Now, there are geniuses in the world who, one might call Tim Burton a genius. Mm-hmm. One might call Elton John a genius. But there are few of them, in my opinion. There are many talented people, but there's, in my humble opinion, few geniuses who really everyone should get behind and follow, because they are so good at what they do. You should let them do it,
Yeah.
In animation, it's mostly collaborative.
Yeah. One of the best collaborations that happened recently, and you might have heard about it or you might not, was when a bunch of artists from across the country of America collaborated to produce a parody remake of Shrek called Shrek Retold.
Gosh, no, I haven't heard about that. Is it funny?
It's really funny. You know the scene where Shrek tells Fiona, "I'm not anyone's messenger boy, I'm a delivery boy"?
Yeah.
In the Shrek Retold movie, it was a fan-made animation, and Shrek was like, "I'm no one's messenger boy, all right?" And he put on a delivery cap and was like, "I'm a delivery boy." And he grabbed Fiona, put her in a box, and he put her on a delivery truck. It's really funny. You'll have to.
I'll have to look that up. Thank you. I know I hadn't heard about that. And Shrek is hilarious, so I'll have a good look at that.
Yeah, it's called Shrek Retold.
Shrek Retold. Thank you. That's fantastic.
No problem. So how'd you guys select the voice actors like Mel Gibson and the others?
Let's see. We would have begun that. My years are a bit foggy because I was there for over 20 years at Disney, and it sometimes blends together. I'm guessing we began first of all, Mike and Eric as the directors were and Jim and I, we were all very clear that we had to be faithful to the Native American history.
Yeah.
That we would be condemned, criticized, torn apart if we were not faithful to the roots of that story. Yeah. Now, it's also a Disney animated film told in 80 minutes, and we did change the ending, as we often do, and we changed pieces of the story along the way. But to the essence of the Native American life, we were as faithful as we could be. And we traveled to the East Coast to meet with the various tribes and nations that are depicted in the movie, and we met with them, and they became counselors and advisors to us about the whole making of the movie, so that we wouldn't do something that was inherently wrong. But essentially, it was a joyous process working with them, but still trying to make an entertaining film.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and I'm glad you guys counseled with the tribes. That's really cool.
It was the first time that Disney film had taken on a historical event, really, of such importance, and we wanted to be faithful. We wanted to be faithful to the nations.
That's good to hear. So what was seeing the actors give their roles like when they were in the recording studio, like Mel Gibson and the actor of Pocahontas?
Well, in answer to your question, again, the casting followed. Well, the casting generally in our movies follows the storyboarding or the script, the storyboarding, the concept design, the conceptual art that's developed for the movie, because you have to get some indication of what the movie is going to be before you can go out and cast it in an animated film. At that moment in time, in the early 90s, Little Mermaid had come out and was an enormous success. Beauty and the Beast had just come out and was nominated for Best Picture. All of a sudden, all of the lights in Hollywood turned on us because we had done something extraordinary. Beauty and the Beast was nominated for Best Picture, and it was a great movie. So every actor at that time, in the early 90s, every single actor wanted to be a voice. They wanted to participate because it sounded fun, and it wouldn't take very much of their time. It's not like they had to go shoot a movie on set. We could meet with them 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times over the course of 2 years and record their voices when they wanted to, where they wanted to. You know, it was easy for them, and they weren't even paid very much in those days. But they wanted to participate. There was this great energy behind our movies. So Mel is one of the guys that wanted to do it. Tom Cruise, other guys wanted, a lot of people wanted in on those movies at that time. I mean, it was hot for them. And Mel was at the peak of his career. He was a strapping guy. Every woman and some men were in love with him across the world. He was a sex symbol, and he was at the top of his game in the early 90s. Really, there was no other A actor, maybe other than Tom Cruise, who would compete with Mel Gibson in those early years. So the guys, Mike and Eric said, well, who do you want to play John Smith? And we want Mel Gibson. Sure enough, Mel was interested, and that was a match made in heaven. It was done in a matter of days. They said Mel, they got Mel, The other voices,
Billy Connolly.
Yeah, the other voices took some time to find. Because, for example, Pocahontas is spoken by one actor and sung by another. For the speaking part, we auditioned the Native American community for quite some time, and we got a wonderful actress with authenticity in her Native American nation. For the singing voice, we got Judy Kuhn, who was and is a Broadway star, who could sing the part, because as you just said earlier in our interview, Colors of the Wind is a beautiful song. It's a hard song to sing, as is Just Around the River Bend, which opens the movie, which she also sings.
I think Pocahontas' actress's name was Irene, wasn't it?
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. And she was beautiful and lovely and a delight to be with. And Judy was fantastic. Judy's was a great professional, and she could just sing her guts out. And we had, we were following Beauty and the Beast, which had Paige O'Hara singing Belle, and she was fantastic. And so it was a challenge to make sure. And the Little Mermaid, of course, was Jodie Benson, who was a Broadway star, and she sang fantastic. So Colors of the Wind and Just Around the River Bend had to be songs that little girls and little boys would want to listen to, that elevated their spirits and their emotions and their heart,
Yeah, and I must also say, I don't know why, but the bad guy songs like Savages seem to be really catchy when it comes to cinema.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I just wonder, when I saw Pocahontas in school years ago, a lot of students were singing Savages because it was so catchy. And I was always looking at them like saying, you don't sing that in school. You should sing Just Around the River Bend or Colors of the Wind.
Well, yeah, that's a funny observation. Beauty and the Beast has a wonderful song called "Kill the Beast," which is about the same place in the movie, the end of beginning of Act 2. Beginning of Act 3. It's about the same place in the movie where Savages is, and we actually used that as an example as a successful villain song, mob song. But David Ogden Stiers, by the way, David, who voiced Radcliffe, bless his heart, he's no longer with us. David Ogden Stiers, who also did Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast,
Ooh.
and starred on MASH for many years. Of course, he was famous for that. You know, he was a great actor. I mean, really, first-rate theater, television, movie actor. And we all loved him. He was genius to work with on Beauty and the Beast. He was hysterical as Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast. And he had such depth as an actor that when he came into the studio for Pocahontas, we hired him automatically because I adored the man and he was a good friend of mine before his death. And he gave such villainy to Radcliffe and such, I don't know, presence and strength, and in contrast to Cogsworth on Beauty and the Beast, you know, complete opposite. We just we adored him and his delivery of that song.
Yeah, he was a great bad guy. No other way to put it.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, it was written well and storyboarded very well, and he delivered the final punch, you know, as an actor.
Yeah, and what I like about Radcliffe in the story is that his villainy was fueled by greed.
Yes.
No other way to put it. Like that's one of the, when I watch a movie these days, I usually analyze the storyline for my writing career to practice my writing skills. And I analyze everything from the story, the characters, the bad guy, etc. You know, and that's how I learn my English skills.
I understand. I think your observation is spot on, and it was important for us that be the underlying. You know, it's not like when you're developing a story, or in this case, whatever story it is, in this case, Pocahontas, you know, themes kept arising.
Yeah.
And one of them was the Native American philosophy that the world lives in this cycle and it all needs to go together. And if you're going to kill a deer, you need to thank the deer after you kill it. That it, you know, there is this incredible cycle of things. And we should be grateful for what we receive and give back. And that's the epitome of what Radcliffe was not. And it was important that we give the contrast to the Native American community of the greed of the conqueror, or this is called the conqueror in that case.
Yeah. And when it comes to cinema, there's quite a bit of bad guys that, you know, have different backstories. Like Syndrome from The Incredibles. Ever seen that movie?
Love The Incredibles, yeah.
Yeah, Syndrome, he was the bad guy mainly because he was a kid that couldn't grow up, you know?
Right.
And, you know, and the king of the Yokians from Jimmy Neutron, you know?
Yeah.
He tried to sacrifice the parents of people that he kidnapped from. Like, Every bad guy has a different backstory, you know?
Yeah.
And every character has a different backstory as well. It's really interesting.
You're right. And the important thing there is that we can, you know, each of us can relate to them. I can relate to Radcliffe. I've said those things that he said. I felt the way he has felt. It's not like I'm perfect or we're perfect.
Yeah.
Right? We all have, in our part of the human experience, we all have the qualities that can take us either direction.
Yeah.
And we should be able to relate to characters on the screen, good and bad, because the truth of it is, we're not perfect. I'm no angel.
And I'm not perfect either. In fact, you probably heard about the rough spot that Mel Gibson went through about 10 years ago. And I actually find myself similar to him, because a few years back, I went through that rough spot that I told you about. And at the same time, you know, I'm really happy that he's making a comeback at the moment, because you might have heard that he's starting to come back in Hollywood.
I love that you say that. I have to tell you, Mel was a complete delight to work with.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, he was, first of all, I'm an openly gay man, and I have a partner, and I've been out since I was, before I got to Disney.
No problem.
There were all rumors at that time that he was a homophobic. and that he didn't like the gays, and the gays would often talk about Mel being homophobic. And I
Yeah.
have to tell you, from the day that I met him, I knew instantly that he wasn't, that was fake news in those days. He
Yeah.
had, he didn't care. He respected people who came to work together. He treated us all well. We had a ball on Pocahontas with him. He was a complete delight.
Yeah.
So I too was sorry to hear that he had a rough patch, and I'm glad he's making a comeback because I really liked him. He's a good man.
Yep, I'm with you on that. And I respect other people's, views and who they are. I'm respective of other people's sexualities as well, The way I look at it, it's your life. You can live it however you wish. You know what I mean?
I do. It's important. We live in a world that's black and white every day, and it shouldn't be. And we live in a world where people are arguing about things that we don't need to argue about.
Yep. I'm very glad that Gibson is making a comeback, and I wish him the best in it.
Me too.
So after that, I must ask, who created the song "Colors of the Wind" and who composed it?
Mm-hmm. Well, the writers of the songs from Beauty and the Beast are Stephen Schwartz and Alan Menken. Now, of course, Alan had previously done Little Mermaid. Alan is the composer. He did The Little Mermaid and did Beauty and the Beast. He had, a whole run of Academy Awards, and of course, he got Academy Award for Colors of the Wind for Pocahontas. But Howard Ashman, as I'm sure you know, the lyricist behind The Little Mermaid and parts of Aladdin, but most importantly, Beauty and the Beast, he died at the end of AIDS. He died at the end of Beauty and the Beast. He never saw the finished film. Howard was a genius, one of those geniuses we were talking about earlier, who was inspired by God to tell these stories and create these movies. He was a Broadway writer. He and Alan had a success on Broadway with musicals and plays like The Little Shop of Horrors. And then he found us in Hollywood, and he made all those string of great movies, all of which won Academy Awards for him and for Alan. But he had died, so Stephen Schwartz was the replacement lyricist, if you want to call him that. They had to find somebody else, and it had to work well with Alan. Alan already had 3 Academy Awards under his belt, so it wasn't like he was a schmuck, And so Stephen Schwartz, who was also famous for having written musicals like Godspell and Wicked is a big hit of his on Broadway still, he came in to write the lyrics. So they were the inspiration and the genius behind all the music, and of course that song.
That's really cool, and it's really a classic song, no other way to put it. And what I interpret from Colors of the Wind is that we need to be accepting of other people who are different from each other. Because just as you might know one culture doesn't mean you know other cultures.
Bingo. And of course, even to our immediate previous conversation about being gay or being autistic or having Asperger's syndrome, none of that should matter.
Yep.
We need to look past those differences, each and every one of us, and just find the things that we share.
For
Respect,
sure.
Love and laughter and harmony.
For sure. And that's one thing that my coach, Andy McPhee, has always told me. He told me, Doug, you're not autism. You have autism, but that's not who you are. You're Doug Kenney.
Exactly right. I agree with that completely.
Can you say a quick hi to Andy for when he watches this very quick?
Hi, Andy. Thanks for your good advice to Doug.
He'll get a kick out of that. All righty. I think because of timing, I'm going to ask only a couple more questions. But yeah, what was recording the song Savages like?
Well, in those days, in those early movies of the Disney Renaissance, oh my God, it was so much fun. There isn't anymore. The famous record label, RCA, had a recording studio in New York City. RCA doesn't exist anymore, and the recording studio, I don't even know what happened to it. But it was in those years where anybody would go in New York City to record a big piece of music because it could accommodate an enormous orchestra. And I'm talking, you know, our orchestras in those movies, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, Pocahontas, The Lion King, were, you know, 100, 120 piece orchestras. They were enormous. It was bigger than a symphony. And so that was the only room in the country at that time that could accommodate a recording as important as the Disney film Pocahontas or Beauty and the Beast or Aladdin or whatever it was. So all of those movies were recorded in New York City at RCA. And so we all would fly there. I guess we recorded the songs for Pocahontas in 4 different recording sessions, if I'm not mistaken, over the course of a year, year and a half in New York. And we would fly into New York. Howard Ashman and Alan Menken lived in New York, so they would just come to the studio in the early days before Howard died, but Alan was always there. And we would record with a big orchestra and the voices. Savages was a challenge because that required a big chorus, and of course David Ogden Stiers, and so you had to, you know, you had to really layer in the different tracks, the vocal tracks, the musical tracks. So those big pieces were hard, and it took a lot of time. I think we recorded that over 2 days.
Oh man, 2 days. So it was recorded in New York City then, rather than LA?
It was, yeah. All of those songs were recorded. I think, let me see, was Pocahontas the last one? I think Pocahontas might have been the last movie that was recorded entirely in New York. Lion King was recorded because Hans Zimmer did the music. I think that was mostly recorded between cities, but also in Los Angeles. But we didn't record any of the music of Pocahontas in Los Angeles.
Alrighty. And you said that was because of the size of the orchestra, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Makes sense. So who came up with the idea of Grandmother Willow in a Tree?
Gosh, let me see if I can remember who actually thought of that. I think it was Mike Gabriel, one of the directors. Now, Mike, I could be wrong on this because I don't quite remember, Doug, but I'm guessing, if I just draw into my cobwebs in my brain, that it was Mike. Excuse me. Mike was an animator and a designer, and still one of the best there is at Disney. He's helped on every single movie for the last 30 years. He's just a very talented artist. In fact, Mike Gabriel, you know the Disney logo, when you go into theaters, you see the castle and right? That the Walt Disney Studios logo was designed and directed by Mike Gabriel.
Ooh. Where the line does this?
Yeah. He and I designed that, and I produced it. He directed it together for the studio. We redid it entirely back in, I don't know, 2004 maybe. And that's the one that's still used. Anyway, Mike designed the whole thing. But that's a tangent. Mike, in the storytelling, they wanted to have a mystical character, one that could symbolize the spirituality of the Native American people. And so I believe he came up with that design and that idea. Based on, now I'm sorry, I'm remembering a bit of trivia. There was a wonderful original Disney artist by the name of Joe Grant. Joe Grant was on Snow White, was on the movies way back in the day. He was very old at that time, and I believe he fed Mike an idea of how to incorporate the spirituality of the Native American world in a character. I'm pretty sure it was Joe Grant that gave Mike the idea, and then Mike developed it further.
Nice. I've seen, speaking of Snow White, I've seen a lot of funny scenes from Snow White that were in the original script but never made the cut. Like the bedroom argument between Doc and Grumpy. Have you ever seen that scene?
Yeah. Do you have it on your VHS?
No, but I had it on a Snow White DVD years ago.
Okay.
Back when I watched much
Yeah,
DVDs.
that's on one of the collections that they produced some years ago.
Yeah, and it looks like they had to use different voice actors since they had passed away, like Jim Cummings. But the funny thing was, there was a part where during the bedroom argument, Grumpy insulted Doc, and Doc tried to return the insult, but got it wrong at every attempt.
Yeah.
Because he gets his words mixed up, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And what's funny is there was a part where Grumpy was like, "Oh, now you've got me doing it." Because he was messing up the insult. And I also learned that the actor of Doc, whose name was Roy Atwell, I believe, I learned that Roy actually made a career off of getting his words mixed up. And so Doc was partly based on him.
I didn't know that. That's interesting trivia.
Yeah, apparently Doc's actor, Roy, he had an appearance on Broadway as a serious actor, and he messed up his line, and the audience laughed, and he took it as the handwriting on the wall and became a comedian.
There you go. I've never heard that story before. You taught me something tonight.
Yeah, his name is Roy Atwell, and he's dead, of course, but he was a popular radio comedian from the 40s.
Wow, thanks for that.
No problem. So due to timing, I'll only ask one more question for this interview, but how's the hotel holding up in COVID times, and what does your future look like as far as film producing or hotel operating?
You're so sweet to ask that. Thank you. I left Disney Animation in 2010, and I left for two reasons. I had done everything I wanted to do, was the first. Very simple. I was nominated for Academy Award for producing the short Destino, and nominated for Academy Award for producing the short Lorenzo with Mike Gabriel as the director. Mike directed Pocahontas. And I had made wonderful movies with wonderful people. And I just felt like I had done it all. I'd done everything that I needed to do there. Now, at the same time, Doug, Roy Disney had just died. And he had been a friend of mine and a mentor of mine. And we made these short films together, Destino and Lorenzo. He literally was on, at the studio with me or with Mike, working on those films. We had a very close relationship. And when he died, it was a little bit like my time was done at Disney. I came in as a young guy, as a nobody, and I was leaving as somebody who had contributed to some great body of work. And Roy had been there, and Peter Schneider, who I adored and who was our boss, had left. And I just felt it was time. And in that same time, I met my partner, Christian, who's Italian, and I met him in Spain while on vacation from my Disney film. And then we just decided it was time to end it all. So film is no longer, I watch movies, I follow them, I love them. I vote as an Academy member on the films, both for nominations and for the awards every year. But I don't participate, I don't work on them anymore.
All righty, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad that you got everything you wanted out of Disney. That's very good.
Thank you.
Oh, just one more quick question. Were you involved in Pocahontas 2 at all?
No, that was done. I was on, I think I was doing Dinosaur at that time. I produced Dinosaur. Pocahontas 2 was done by the TV department. In those days, the sequels were handed off to direct-to-video, was handed off to a different group of talent. They were not done by us in the Walt Disney feature animation. They were done by what we then called TV animation, which was really, they were doing better than TV animation, but that's what we call them. And that was a whole separate group of people.
All righty, that makes sense. And honestly, there are a couple direct-to-video movies that were released direct-to-video, but I do believe to an extent that they probably would have been really successful if released to theaters. Like, the sequel to Prince of Egypt about Joseph, I think it's called Joseph, King of Dreams or something like that.
I haven't seen that movie. Of course, I know the story, but I haven't seen the movie, Doug.
Yeah, that was a movie that came out with DreamWorks, which is probably why you didn't see it. It was a separate company, but you know, but it was released in 2000, and it was the sequel to Prince of Egypt, which was a theatrical release, you know, and
yes.
And Joseph, I saw it for the first time a few years back when I was in the middle of my rough spot. Even though I knew about the movie for years, I never saw it until my teens. And my cousin introduced it to me and told me it wasn't a theatrical release. And by the time that I got to the "You Know Better Than I" scene, which is the most powerful scene in the movie, you know, the signature song, I was like, how did this movie not get released in theaters? It's brilliant. You know what I mean?
I understand. I think that in those days, both for Disney and for DreamWorks, there was a drive and a necessity to make money by the companies. And so they had lined up talent to make the theatrical releases, and they had lined talent to make the direct-to-video releases, and they didn't overlap in either company, because they wanted to have one theatrical release a year, and they wanted to have one or two or three direct-to-video releases a year, and it was about making money.
Okay, got it. That makes sense.
That's how it worked out, and so the same people couldn't work on all those movies, and we would never have been successful. So the feature group was working on the features, and the direct-to-video was working on the direct-to-video, and I just think it was about making. Sad to say, I think it was about trying to make profits.
Okay, that makes sense, and that's the thing about business. You try to make profits as best as you can.
It is show business, after all.
Show business. Yep, you got it. Alrighty, so due to timing, I think I have to end this interview, but I was wondering if you would like to continue this discussion later on in the future, maybe with my coach and mentor, Andy McPhee, for remaining questions.
I'd be happy to, Doug. It was a pleasure talking to you today, truly.
It was a pleasure talking to you too, and I wish you good luck in tough times as COVID.
Thank you.
And can you say a quick hi to Andy's son, Cody Smith McPhee, as well, who is known as the Nightcrawler in the last X-Men movie?
No, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that movie, and he's scary as shit. Sorry, my language.
No problem. Swearing is allowed on my show.
Okay, Cody, nice to meet you over Zoom.
For sure. And just so you know, cursing is allowed on my show except for the N-word and stuff.
I'm sorry, I don't generally curse, but I love that movie and I love that part, so there you go.
Alrighty, no problem. Alrighty, take care.
Thank you, Doug, very much. Take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself.